Alright guys, so today for MX versus ATV Legends, I want to do a video that I did do in the very beginning. It was pretty basic. I didn't have a bunch of time in the game. I've learned a lot since it first released, and they've done patches to change the physics, the way the game plays, and improve and change the bike tuning and how it affects the bike. So I always get a few questions each week about my bike setup, my bike tune, what's mine. And I haven't done this in a very long time. My bike setup is different than it was in the very beginning. I do have a different setup for indoors and outdoors. It is very, very similar, but it is a bit different. So we will go over my bike setup, but before we do that, I feel like it's important to understand the bike setup and the bike tuning and how moving it left or right or keeping it in the middle affects how the bike feels. So we're going to go over that first and then go into my bike setup for indoors and outdoors. So let me know in the comments what your guys' bike setup is, and if you do enjoy this video, if it does help, please leave a like on it. It really helps the video out. But let's jump into it and check out the first setup. Alright guys, so the first bike setup we're going to go over would be the default bike setup. We don't go left, we don't go right, we just stay in the middle. And no, I do not recommend this whatsoever, but I kind of want to talk about how the bike feels, how the bike handles, and how you can kind of get a base starting point if you take the bike out in its default way. So for testing reasons, I came to a 2025 replica. For Supercross, I do change my bike setup a little bit for indoors versus outdoors, and we will go over it, but I have some stuff I want to show you here. So the default bike setup didn't feel too bad. I mean, it was kind of comparable to what I have for my bike setup, but not exactly. And the biggest difference for me is the power. The way I have my bike set up, the power was down, and the clutch boost is not near as good, so you don't have that extra boost to bail you out if you case, or to get that extra oomph, I guess, to try to get over one more jump if you're trying to quad instead of triple or whatever, and to come out of corners and stuff. So this bike setup was not, it wasn't my bike setup, but it wasn't as far away from my bike setup as I might have thought it would have been, just having it the default way. And I encourage you to try this and see how it feels, and then start adjusting the bike from here. Now, for this bike setup, we go all the way to the left side with everything. And no, I don't recommend this whatsoever. But the best part about this bike setup is you have maximum power and you have maximum clutch boost, which is very important in this game. It is very slippery. It is too slippery, actually. I pushed out over ruts all the time. I had to brake a bit earlier and turn a bit different, but in my opinion, if you go all the way to the left side, this bike setup feels not as bad as I was expecting. It wasn't close to my bike setup, but it didn't feel as far away as I might have thought it was, because the bike is very nimble, very maneuverable in the air this way. Yes, it affects you kind of in a negative way on the ground, because again of how slippery it can get, but in the air you can move the bike, you could whip, you could scrub, and it feels pretty decent. It feels maneuverable versus some other ways of having the bike set up. It was just the ground was probably the biggest negative to it. And again, you have maximum power, maximum clutch boost. Now, the clutch boost is important. They have changed it. It has been nerfed in the past. Different gears would give you more boost, and they've kind of backed it off from in the very beginning and toned it down. And if you use the experimental bikes, you don't have this clutch boost. You have, it is still a boost, but more realistic. So I wanted to mention that as well. And then for the final setup, before we get into mine, we go all the way to the right side. Everything is maxed out to the right. Now, when I first started playing the game, this was how I kind of wanted to have my bike set up. I felt like I wanted to have the bars pretty even and try to get them all as high as possible, but I do not recommend it. If you're new to the game, maybe this is what you try to do as well, but I wouldn't recommend it. I do not feel like this is the best way. In my opinion, the default setup, the setup we have all the way to the left, and the one all the way to the right, if I were to rank them, this is the worst bike setup. You have less clutch boost, you have less overall power, and the bike is very, 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 very stiff. It is hard to corner the bike quickly. It is hard to turn the bike fast. It just doesn't turn sharp. It is kind of hard to whip and scrub in the air. It doesn't have it's not as responsive, I guess, in the air. And when you're trying to get into the ruts, you need to be able to turn sharp sometimes. I mean, it probably would work a bit better outdoors, but the indoor bike setup with this being this way, in my opinion, was awful. It just felt terrible. It was horrible. It just wasn't good, in my opinion. Now, maybe you like to have it this way. I'm not saying your bike setup is wrong. Maybe you're very fast this way, but in my opinion, for me, this was not a great way to tune the bike. So now we switch over to my bike setup. The first one all the way left, the second one all the way left, third one all the way right, then we go down all the way right. The middle one, traction, we go one right, and then suspension, we go all the way right. This is how I have my bike set up for Supercross. This is what feels good in my opinion. The bike is maneuverable in the air. The bike turns really well. It's responsive. Yes, it can be a bit slippery. If you prefer to have more traction and you try this setup, you probably might not like it for that reason. But in my opinion, MX vs. ATV Legends released very, very slippery. They have improved it a crazy amount and made it much, much better, and have improved tuning to give yourself more traction. But the game was made slippery. So I do believe MX vs. ATV Legends requires a certain amount of slip in the game to make it work, to be able to hit the ruts. And no, yes, I do push out over ruts, I do push out over berms, and I, make mistakes this way for sure. But after all the time I have in the game, messing around with different bike setups, this is what I prefer for whipping, for scrubbing, for turning, and specifically for indoors for Supercross. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we get to my outdoor bike setup is that different bikes can feel a bit different. The power and the way the bikes deliver the power should be all the same, but each bike isn't just a reskin of the same bike. They are completely different models in the game. And people believe, I don't know if they still believe it, but people believe that the Honda feels the best. I don't know. I've been seeing people say this since all the way back in MX vs. ATV Supercross Encore and All Out and now Legends. People have said certain bikes can feel better than other bikes, and I don't know. In my opinion, all the bikes feel pretty much the same to me. I don't really notice too much of a difference. The Honda maybe feels a little bit better, but that could just be influence of everybody saying the Honda feels the best. So I don't know. I've turned my best laps on all kinds of different bikes, and it was like that in Encore, All Out, this game. So I don't know. I default to the Honda just in case, but all the bikes feel pretty much the same to me. But I did want to mention it, that the community has said that, not everybody, but the community has said in the past that they feel like the Honda feels the best. Now, for my outdoor setup, the only change I do is with traction, we go one to the right. That's it. And the only reason I do this is because with the outdoors, you have faster pace, you have more wide open, you have less tight, slow corners. I mean, it would depend on what track you're at, but most of the time, corners are a bit more open, speeds are higher, and you have tons of massive ruts. And moving the traction over one keeps us a bit more grounded, lets us try to track around each rut a little bit better. Maybe we can't turn quite as good, but again, for the outdoors, it usually isn't too much of a problem. Now, I could use a Supercross setting, and a lot of times I forget to go back and switch the tuning from one or the other. I mean, it's easier for me to use my Supercross setup for outdoors than it is for me to use the outdoor setup for indoors. So I just wanted to say that's a minor adjustment, but it is noticeable in my opinion. So those are my bike setups. That's how I kind of play the game. If they do physics changes or tuning changes, yes, I might revisit these. But currently in 2025, after or whatever version of the game we're on, this is what I prefer. I'd be curious to see what you guys prefer. Do you prefer to have more quick handling and be slippery, or be less slippery but not be able to maneuver the bike as well? It would depend on what you want to do. Do you want to do freestyle, free ride, and just hit big lines and have fun? Or do you want to ride supercross? Or do you want to ride motocross? It would depend how you change your bike and how you have it set up. But this is what I do. Curious to see what you guys do. If you do enjoy the video, please leave a like on it. It helps the video out. Also, I would use a manual. I would definitely use the manual transmission. But you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.